Welcome to the award-winning fantasy basketball podcast by RotoWire, brought to you by Underdog Fantasy and Vivid Seats and Rival Fantasy. Look at all these sponsors.
Oh,
Someone's busy.
Someone that is Shannon's job. It's Friday, October 27th, 2023. Alex Barutha here with Shannon McEwen and Ken K-Train Kreitz.
all aboard!
We're going to jump straight into the news. Damian Lillard last night put up 39 points. 39 points.
30.
I basically watched him score 29 points because I saw the second half. They beat the Hardenless 76ers. Dame with 39 points, a 9 of 20 shooting, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 triples, 17 of 17 from the free throw line. I cannot tell you the last time a Milwaukee Bucks fan saw someone shoot 17 of 17 from the free throw line. We also had Tyrese Maxey in the absence of James Harden go for 31, 8 dimes, 2 steals. Kelly Oubre had a nice game as well. Shannon, do you have any? I mean, this Harden situation, the NBA is investigating it. He wanted to play. The team was like, I don't know if we want you to play. What do you really anticipate happening here?
I mean, as a fantasy, if you're as a fantasy manager, if you roster James Harden right now, you can't do anything but sit on your hands. You just keep him on your bench and wait until this all blows over. There's one of two options. I don't think he's going to continue to sit out beyond this road trip. It's either going to be he's playing with the Sixers or he gets traded. It's one of those two options. I don't think they're just going to sit him long term. So hopefully,
he'll wear a Sixers uniform. You think we'll see him on the court in a Sixers uniform?
I'm
not sure they trust him. I think he might not quite tank it, but not really give full effort either. We've seen that before.
I mean, that could be the outcome. We'll see. I don't think we're going to see an NBA player out on the court purposefully tanking games. Will his effort be 110%? Has Harden's effort ever been 110% on both sides of the court? Who knows?
Yes.
So I again, as a fantasy manager, you sit on your hands. I do think there's something's going to happen once this road trip's completed and the Sixers get ready to play their third game of the season.
When does Joel Embiid make a stink about this? It's got to be driving him crazy. Is he privately gonna make ultimatums to Morey, or does he ever come out publicly and say anything?
I was gonna say, I think partially if you're Embiid and you're not really saying anything about it, I think that's basically the equivalent of just clearly being annoyed by it. Like if you're not like, I would love to welcome James Harden back. He's a great guy. If he was coming out and saying all that, that's one thing, but just kind of being silent about it, I think it just implies kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, and with Embiid, this one thing I'll say about his Sixers teammates is if they want to win a championship this year, having Harden on the team is the easiest path to that. Trading for Terrence Mann and Norm Powell and Bones Highland or whatever it's going to be, whatever that package would have to be from the Clippers, is not going to make them a better overall team.
I thought the holdup was more picks so they can then flip the picks for some other veteran player but then that implies that there are veteran players available. Nobody really comes to mind, but
hopefully Bogdanovich is available.
Well, let's get back to real basketball. The other game last night for players playing, Lakers beat Phoenix in the LA home debut. AD bounced back with a nice 30-point, 12 rebound, 3 block, 3 steal performance. LeBron, who was allegedly on a minutes restriction, played 35 minutes, 21 points, 8 boards, 9 dimes, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Of course, this is against the Suns team with no Booker, no Beal. KD had a very nice 39-11 game. I'll tell you what made me a little concerned, and maybe you guys don't care, but Yusuf Nurkic, who should have had a lot more opportunities with Booker and Beal out, he did have 9 rebounds, but only 4 points on 1 of 5 shooting. Other than the big 3 guys, who appeals to you in Phoenix?
Well, I mean, we're going to talk about one of them later. I mean, yeah. So I don't want to step on Shannon's toes. We're going to get to one particular player in Phoenix later. One guy I'll bring up is Eric Gordon, partially because Beal is relatively injury prone. We're seeing it already. Booker will probably get nights off as well. And that backcourt is just not, it's really thin. So, Jordan Goodwin also got 30 minutes in this game, 14 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Like both of those guys, if you're in a deep league, are interesting or are at least worth like a streamer in daily leagues if you have like unlimited claims, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Eric Gordon, negative 27 last night in 30 minutes, 6 for 16, 2 for 8 from downtown. He had a rough season opener with the Suns as well. He looks quite a bit slower than past years, especially on the defensive end. He is pretty ancient. He's basically the Ken Kreitz of the NBA at this stage of his career. So, it is tough, but he will have some value if you're desperate for 3-pointers when the Suns are shorthanded.
Which could be often. I don't know how many games Bradley Beal has left in him. We'll see.
It's tough to say. I mean, I won't be surprised if they sit guys. Everybody knew this though when they drafted him. Booker's the guy who you expect to play the most games.
Yeah.
And then kind of either Beal or Durant behind him. I was happy to get Beal in the second round in my NFBKC draft, but drafting him in the first round, a little tough. That pretty much does it for news. So we are going to, before we get into fan feedback and waiver wire, we're going to talk about Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the #1 platform for NBA best ball and DFS player pick'em contests. If you haven't tried Underdog yet, new Underdog users receive a first-time deposit bonus up to $500 and a free 6-month subscription to RotoWire with promo code RWNBA. That's promo code RWNBA. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app today and use promo code RWNBA to claim your free RotoWire subscription and deposit bonus.
That's code RWNBA. Okay, let's get to our fan feedback. Fans, please ask us a question in the comments of this week's waiver wire video on the new RotoWire Fantasy Basketball YouTube page, and we may answer it here or in next week's show. We got this in our Risers and Fallers video from the preseason from Angel Ibarra. Angel, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. He or she wants to offer a friend Miles Turner and Brandon Miller in hopes to get Anthony Davis, which might be a little tougher after last night's game. What say you, Shannon and Alex?
I will say that I don't view Brandon Miller as a 12-team fantasy player this year. So in my opinion, you're trading Miles Turner for Anthony Davis, which is a win.
Yeah. If you can do it, then good on you. This seems more like a dynasty league offer than a redraft. So if it is dynasty format and you're dangling Brandon Miller as the sweetener with Miles Turner, that can make sense. I would be very surprised if you're able to pull off this trade in a redraft single season league. And even if you view Brandon Miller, like let's say you think Brandon Miller might be 12-team relevant this year, I don't think he's going to be so good that his production is not able to be found basically off of the waiver wire. Like I think he'll be replacement level. If maybe he's your second option off your fantasy bench, but you can also stream guys in on 4-game weeks in that spot, and it's fine. So yeah,
it's a keeper league. It's a keeper league deal. Miles Turner's only 27. It's a keeper league offer, but it doesn't make sense season long. Okay, well with that, Alex, what's next?
We are officially jumping into our first waiver wire of the season. Obviously, one of the biggest waiver wire periods of the entire season are the first, I would say, 3 weeks, and then pretty much a trade deadline. So of the few major ones, this is obviously huge.
And we got to explain the format.
Yes.
We each pick 2 regular waiver wire pickups and then 1 long shot.
Yes. Regular waiver wire pickups being about or less than 50% rostered in usually Yahoo leagues we use. And then a long shot being less than 25% rostered. I'm going to jump straight into it. My first waiver wire option is Xavier Tillman of the Memphis Grizzlies. Also Santi Aldama, but we have yet to see him play. Xavier Tillman's 53% rostered right now. Obviously, with the Steven Adams out for the season news, he got scooped up very quickly. But we have Santi Aldama still only 21% rostered. Like I mentioned, Steven Adams out for the whole year. Aldama's dealing with an ankle injury, hasn't played, won't play today, Friday. Tillman, in his first game in the opener, 17 points, 12 boards, 4 assists, 3 steals, 1 block. This Memphis team is pretty thin in terms of depth. Not thin. They have David Roddy on the roster. But Tillman, we saw him in the playoffs last year. Like, we know Tillman is good. And he's going to get maybe 30 minutes a game. Maybe they pull back a little bit when Santi is there. But this is just a clear ad for, pretty much every league.
I think if you need threes, Santi's obviously the better option. And I'm curious to see how many starts Tillman gets versus Santi when they're both healthy.
I still think there's a possibility the Grizz will go with a big lineup for stretches too, where you have Santi, Tillman, and Jaren Jackson all in the lineup at the same time. Santi is a decent passer, so I think they can make that work. You guys mentioned he can stretch the floor, so it'll be at least until John Morant comes back, I could see them being creative with some of their 5-man rotations.
Ken, who is your first waiver wire pickup for this season?
Well, before I do that, I do want to ask fans, please, if you like our videos, please hit like and subscribe below. My first free agent pickup for the season, Chicago Bull Coby White, who's 41% rostered as of yesterday, and mostly because he is the starting point guard for your Chicago Bulls. Chicago really didn't have any off-season roster changes of note, and they were really spinning their wheels last year with Dosunmu and Caruso at the point guard. So they're going to experiment with higher scorer Coby White, which I think is a solid move. There's just a lot more upside to White. He's never going to be an 8 assists per game guy, but they're going to give him a long run as a starting point guard. He obviously has the higher draft pedigree. And to me, point guards are always in short supply off the waiver wire. Grab Coby White.
Yeah, Coby White played 31 minutes in the season opener. The only time in his career where he averaged 31 minutes or more. He averaged 15 points, 4 rebounds, 4.8 assists. Guess what he had in the season debut? 15, 4, and 4.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty much exactly what he put up in preseason as well, like per 30, per 36. So, yeah, really a good ad there, Ken. Very clear for all leagues. What do you? Who's your first ad, Shannon?
My first ad is rookie center for the Dallas Mavericks, Dereck Lively. Dereck Lively had a lot of preseason helium. He started pretty much the entire preseason for the Mavs, and then he surprisingly did not start the season opener. They went with Ken Kreit's favorite, Maximilian Kleber, instead. But Lively did start the second half, and he played really well. 16 points, 10 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block. He was, 2 for 3 from the line, 7 for 8 from the floor. Lively's not gonna stretch the floor. His field goal percentage is going to be astronomically high because every shot he takes is going to be a putback or a lob. He gives Luka and Kyrie that lob threat that they really, Luka hasn't really had in his career. And I think he's going to stick in the starting lineup after getting the nod as the starter in the second half of the opener against the Spurs. I fully expect him to start moving forward unless Jason Kidd pulls some kind of weird shenanigans. But Lively, I would argue, Tillman or Lively, depending on your appetite, those are probably the top 2 pickups to target in this free agent period.
They love Kleber and Powell, but they've spun their wheels for a long time with those 2 as the top big man options. Lively's the way to go, at least for a long while.
Yeah, he was really affecting the game with his pick and roll, like vertical spacing. It was just when he was in the game, it really felt like Dallas's offense was running better. I'm going to jump to my second waiver wire pickup, which is Jalen Johnson of the Atlanta Hawks. 32% rostered. Atlanta's forward minutes after they traded away John Collins this offseason, pretty up for grabs. Preseason didn't really tell us that much. It remained a bit confusing. Saddiq Bey actually got the start in the opener against the Hornets, but Bey, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, they all got between, I think, 29 and 31 minutes. So they all played the same amount. In 29 minutes, Jalen Johnson had 21 points on 13 shots, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Johnson is an amazing athlete, like a freak athlete. So his defensive upside is pretty high, and he's a way better passer than people expect. He was excellent passing in the preseason. We saw that in the playoff series against Ken's Boston Celtics. He had some nice moments as well. It seemed like Atlanta really liked him there. So I think he's worth taking a chance on if he's going to continue to play roughly 30 minutes a game.
Well, the Hawks are not married to Saddiq Bey. They did not give him a rookie extension, meaning he'll be a restricted free agent at the end of the season. So I think Bey's on a very short leash as the starter there. And similarly, AJ Griffin could also get a ton of forward minutes. As you say, the forward spaces are wide open in Atlanta.
Yeah, with Atlanta, they have a roster full of tweeners, guys who can play multiple positions. So Saddiq Bey can easily slide down. You know, when he was with Detroit, he would slide down to the 2 at times. He would slide up to the 4. Jalen Johnson can play the 3 or 4. You can see DeAndre Hunter, same thing.
Bogdanovich
and even
plays the 3 sometimes.
Yeah, Bogdanovich can play 1 through 3. So I think you've got a lot of guys who are tweeners that could play multiple positions. They ran a 9-man rotation in that season opener. AJ Griffin, who only played 10 minutes, it looks like he's really kind of the odd man out with that forward rotation. So if it's a 3-man rotation and Jalen Johnson's playing 28 minutes per game, he's gonna have some solid fantasy value.
Ken, our next waiver wire pickup, your waiver wire pickup, was one of our sleepers for this season.
Sure was. Cam Thomas of the Brooklyn Nets, who some of us are also wagering on to be a 6th man of the year. He's going to offer points, and more points. You may have noticed he had 36 points coming off the bench. That was the most off the bench points, I think, for any NBA player in a season opener. And it wasn't like it was an ugly volume. He shot 13 of 21, 8 from 11 from the free throw line, 2 of 5 threes. He had 23 points per 36 minutes last year for the Nets. And this second unit is filled with defenders like Royce O'Neal and Dorian Finney-Smith. I think, they're setting up Cam Thomas to be their instant offense off the bench guy, a Vinny the Microwave Johnson type. So if you need points and threes, I love Cam Thomas. Yesterday he was 41% rostered on Yahoo. Get him in your free agent waiver claim queue.
Speaking of 40%, his usage rate 45.2%.
Exactly.
But I think your point is good about Brooklyn. A lot of their bench guys or their their secondary guys are defenders. So if it's the middle of the third quarter and they're down by 18, they're gonna put Cam Thomas in because they just need scoring.
Right. Ben Simmons, and even the starters, Ben Simmons not going to light it up. Nick Claxton isn't going to light it up. You're really relying a ton on Bridges, Cam Johnson, Dinwiddie, and Thomas to do the bulk of the scoring for the squad. And there are the nights when Cam Johnson's not going to be hitting his shots, and they're going to very, very happy to switch to Thomas.
Yes. Yeah, that is true. I will say, the breakout potential of Cam Thomas, as we highlighted during the preseason, could have a negative impact on some of these other guys within the starting lineup. Mikal Bridges only had a 22.9 usage, 12 field goal attempts in the first game. Spencer Dinwiddie only played 24 minutes, 1 for 3 from the floor. So I do, those are things to watch, and depending on how many minutes, how much volume, how much usage Cam Thomas has, I will say if Cam Thomas goes off and has another 2 or 3 games like this, I am selling high. So putting that out there.
All right. Dinwiddie could be a trade deadline option for these Nets. At 30 years of age, he does not match the timeline of the rest of the squad. I mean, I think they also view him as Ben Simmons insurance, right? You never know when Ben Simmons is going to have a back injury that suddenly can't be played for 2 years. But if they can trust Simmons, Dinwiddie seems like a great trade deadline deal.
This absolutely, Ken. This Nets team, outside of Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Nick Claxton, the rest of the roster, if this team's not winning games, the rest of the roster will be available.
Shannon, who is your next waiver wire pickup?
The Strus is loose. Big game in Cleveland in his Cleveland debut. Max Strus started at small forward for the Cavs in that Brooklyn Nets game. He played 39 minutes, 27 points, 9 for 17 from the floor, 7 for 13 from downtown, 2 for 2 from the line, 12 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block. Now, this is,
no Jared Allen in that game. So
no Jared Allen
for grabs. Yeah.
A lot of boards up for grabs. Isaac Okoro received the spot start in place of Jared Allen. Max Strus should be locked in as this team's starting small forward and receive heavy minutes all season long. I do expect he'll have a slightly bigger role than he had in Miami last year. They paid him the money. They received 0 production from their small forward spot last year.
0.
Now, the caveat being that season debut with the Cavs will be Max Strus's best fantasy game of the season.
It will be. It really
will. Put it out there. Yeah. But
he's not going to have another 12 rebound game the rest of the season.
No.
I would wait.
And he's only going to hit 7 threes, maybe one other time this year. But will he average 2.5 3-pointers per game? Will score you 12 to 13 points? Grab a decent amount of rebounds for a small forward? Yes. Yes, he will. Yes. I like Max Strus. I liked him a lot in deeper formats as a late round dart. And I do think he's worth a look, especially if you're desperate for 3-pointers.
If you're an Evan Mobley manager and you see Strus get double the rebounds and almost triple the points on opening night, how irritating is that? How frustrated are you?
It is a little frustrating. You were hoping for Mobley to have a big game, but Mobley has such a high floor. I think it was Mobley's draft. His ADP was not unreasonable. People were not drafting him 22nd and thinking some big breakout was coming. Like you could still get him at like 35. But yeah, Shannon, you're completely right, Shannon. They have to play Strus 30 minutes a game for their spacing. This might be his best game. If you're rostering him already, maybe sell high. If you aren't, it's a good pickup. And you can hang on to him. It's fine. Get him on your team or sell high if you can get a ridiculous return for him.
Yeah. Now, Alex, I believe you stay in Cleveland for your first long shot free agent pick of the year.
I am. It's not a super long shot, but Caris LeVert of the Cleveland Cavaliers, again, 17% roster on Yahoo. Nothing out of the ordinary from LeVert in the opener, honestly. 31 minutes, 24% usage rate, put up 11 points, 5 assists. But
5 dimes were nice.
5 dimes are nice, but he can pass. I mean, this is like a process thing. He just needs to be rostered in deep leagues. If you're in a 16-team league and Caris LeVert is not on a roster, that's just not right. Because he's in the rotation already. Even when nobody's hurt, the complete rotation, he's playing 26 to 30 minutes a game. He's a high-level 6-man for them. And then if Mitchell or Garland gets hurt, he becomes the secondary playmaker. So I just think in deep leagues, he's such a clear ad. It's not a crazy upside pick or anything like that. But he should be rostered. Ken, let's just go to your long shot.
I'm going to go to Oklahoma City and suggest Isaiah Joe, who's 1% rostered. I think the Thunder are grooming Joe to be their points off the bench guy in much the way we talked about Cam Thomas. This team needs outside shooting, and Joe shot 41% from behind the arc last season. He had 15 points, 5 boards, and 3 triples Wednesday at Chicago. That was in his 22 minutes, led the bench for the Thunder. If you need those Max Strus and Cam Thomas categories of points and triples, but those two were not available, look to Isaiah Joe for the Thunder.
I think that's a good point, Ken. 24.7% usage in game one. Their bench is still their bench has a lot of room for somebody to emerge.
Yes.
They don't have a lot of established bench options that we know are going to play 28 minutes a game. I think Joe is a good option there. I will say there are people watching in this live stream. Somebody asked a question: Jalen Johnson or Herb Jones, 10-team points league. My opinion is Jalen Johnson because he has upside. He has way more points upside and assists upside. Herb Jones, I don't really like specialists in points leagues, especially like 3-and-D guys, because you're not getting the benefit of the 3-point category. Steals are worth a lot, but Herb Jones is just not really a part of their offense. And plus, when Trey Murphy comes back, fewer minutes for Jones. So I really like Jalen Johnson in that case, especially in a 10-team points league.
Yeah, that is a tough question. Herb Jones is going to have decent run here with Trey Murphy out, but I do expect Trey Murphy to be reinserted into the starting lineup once he is at full strength and shakes off all the rust. So, it's to be determined when that's going to happen. I like Jalen Johnson a little bit more because 10-team league, I believe Jalen Johnson has more upside. Herb Jones is basically already in most 10-team formats, depending on the depth of the rosters. Herb Jones is basically end of the bench guy anyways. So
all right, Shannon,
I like Johnson's upside there.
Nice. Shannon, give us your long shot pick, who's supposed to be rostered in less than 25% of leagues.
Yeah, he's right around 30%. He was closer to 25 when I made this. It was before last night's game. Come on, give me a break. Josh Okogie for the Phoenix Suns, starting small forward. He's locked into it. It's pretty simple math here. Do I think Okogie is worth a roster spot in 10-teamers? No. 12-teamers? Probably not, unless it's a deeper bench. But deeper formats than that, yes. He's locked in the starting lineup for the Suns. He's playing minutes. Beal and Booker are both dealing with what I presume are minor injuries right now. So they both sat Thursday's game against the Lakers. Okogie's not going to light up the box score, but he can give you decent production, hit some threes, grab some rebounds, hopefully get some defensive stats. He's averaging, he basically has 1 block and one steal through 2 games right now. But the threes have been there. The rebounds have been there. Those hustle stats are what he's known for. Yeah. So as long as he's getting 33 minutes per, I'm going to roster him in like a 14-team league.
I watched basically half of both of those first 2 Suns games. And like watching the Suns, it's so clear how crucial he is to what they do. Like the hustle, you mentioned the hustle. He is flying in for offensive rebounds like he's Dennis Rodman. He is just a pure hustle guy, will hit some threes once in a while. Like he is so locked in for them. I just can't imagine anybody taking his minutes.
He's the star complement. Someone has to play someone has to take that defensive lead hustle role when you've got a Durant and Booker and Beal in there. He's the perfect guy for that. He's not going to complain about a lack of shots. So his minutes are going to be huge. When they're all healthy, how many shots he gets? But how many times will all 3 of those guys be healthy? Not so sure. Yeah.
Through the first 2 games, I can tell you he is definitely not losing minutes to Eric Gordon or Grayson Allen once this team's healthy.
I texted this to Waylon. Gordon looks chubby, or chubbier, I should say.
I think he's
always, he's a little.
And I have no room to talk, but just saying.
Grayson Allen is just, finally hitting that stage of his evolution where he just is becoming Ted Cruz.
Right. He's the towel waver there at the corner. Could leave for Acapulco at any moment.
All right, let's wrap up this waiver wire section with a Vivid Seats. Vivid Seats is sponsoring this podcast, so I'm going to do their read. The NBA season is here.
Please be more literal.
Hey, the people love transparency. All right. The NBA season is here. On behalf of our friends at Vivid Seats, let's get one thing clear. Nothing beats seeing your favorite team crush it on the court to the sound of thousands of screaming fans. Every dunk, dribble, and every heart-pounding play of your favorite team, live and in person. And because Vivid Seats is the only ticketing company where you can earn rewards on every purchase, you can score amazing deals and unrivaled annual rewards all season long. Plus, with a 100% buyer guarantee, you can be sure your ticket will be as legit as your love for the game. Visit vividseats.com or download the app today and use promo code RotoWire for $20 off your first $200 purchase. That is promo code ROTOWIRE for $20 off your first $200 ticket purchase. Download the app or visit vividseats.com. Vivid Seats, experience it live.
That's code ROTOWIRE.
We are jumping into our Friday DFS picks. This will be a little less chaotic than at other points during the season when a bunch of people are hurt and questionable and it's a disaster. It's a little more straightforward this time around. We have an 11-game slate today. The highest over-under, Warriors at Kings, set at 238. I did say, Nick and I do the NBA XM show. Over the past 2 seasons, over-unders in October that are over 230 go under 65% of the time. Just a heads up if you are a gambling man. But we are talking DFS. Shannon, are there any values or stayaways that stick out to you immediately on this slate?
Well, before I dive into my DFS values, I do want to mention we are running a DFS tiers contest on Splash Sports. Splash Sports is a new sponsor with RotoWire. I'm going to try to run these contests every single year. If you are interested, we will post a link out to sign up for Splash Sports and enter the contest. On the show notes and descriptions, both for audio and video. And also go to our NBA lineups page today, and you will see a link to Splash Sports on there as well. It's pretty hard to miss, but they have pretty cool DFS tiers where you basically, our concept set up where you just $5 to enter, you select 5 players, 1 from each tier. I'll give you a freebie. Tier 1, Jokic is in there, and there's no one else even close. You have to go with Jokic with tier 1. Please check it out. Play against me and
the teal whale, I believe, is their logo, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But for our DFS weekly segment, we will be highlighting salary cap picks primarily. We'll see if this segment evolves during the season. For now, I'm going to jump around between DraftKings and FanDuel a little bit. Mention a few picks I like on each site. Like Alex said, there's not like 1 or 2 obvious games to really target with tonight's slate. But there is one obvious value pick, both on FanDuel and DraftKings, that I consider a must start, and that is Day'Ron Sharpe.
Yes.
The Brooklyn Nets are without Nick Claxton. Sharpe is $5,000 on FanDuel, and he is at 3,300, almost a mint price player on DraftKings. That's a free square right there. You have to plug them in. So I mean, that to me, Alex, is the most obvious value for tonight's slate.
Very obvious value. Going up against an inexperienced and old, and they're playing Dallas. Like, you're going up against Dereck Lively, who's a rookie. You're going up against Maxi Kleber and Dwight Powell, who are aging. This is a really good opportunity for Sharpe. Sharpe is one of the best offensive rebounders in the NBA. Now, is he good at anything else? Not really. But does it matter for 3,300 on DraftKings? Or I can't remember what you said on FanDuel, but 5,000.
He will get tip-ins.
He will. Yeah, that's the clear value play. That's the free square. I'll ask you, Shannon, because the Detroit Pistons, to start the season, kindly announced that Bojan Bogdanović and Monte Morris would basically be out a month with no warning whatsoever. But they played a really strong game against the Miami Heat in the opener. Can you tell us what you saw in that game? Because they're playing the much worse Charlotte Hornets today, which has an over-under of 227.
I mean, it was the Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren show. Those were the 2 most impressive players on the court. Bam also looked really good on the Heat side. But Cade was in total control. The Pistons in general dealt with tons of turnovers, especially in the first half. I believe it's 15 turnovers in the first half. A lot of just, wires crossed, bad passes that went right out of bounds. They should clean that up as the season progresses. But Cade with his 30 points, nine assists, and hitting threes, super efficient. Jalen Duren, 4 blocks. And that kind of feeds into one of the other things I'm seeing on DFS for tonight's slate is you've got guys like on FanDuel, both Cade and Duren are quite a bit more expensive than they were for the season opener. Duren's at 7,900, Cade's at 88 on FanDuel. those prices, even with the cushy matchup, I am hesitant to pull the trigger on either. I do think they're both within range where they can be considered options, but I like Duran, for instance, far more on DraftKings. On DraftKings, Duran's only 5,600.
Wow.
And in general, that highlights what I've seen comparing this slate to Wednesday's slate. DraftKings didn't react too much. Their pricing kind of remained the same. They didn't react from the one game, whereas FanDuel's pricing is all over the map from the one game. So for
Cam Thomas might be cheap then.
Yeah, no, on DraftKings, I think he is. He's definitely cheaper on DraftKings than he is FanDuel. I would have to look into that, but it's very reactionary pricing on FanDuel, so it's actually made me take kind of two different approaches between the two sites. I like Sharp on both, as mentioned, but on FanDuel, I like the guys who put up duds in the first game. I like those disappointing. I want the bounce back candidates. So you got guys like Jalen Brown at 6,900, Evan Mobley 76, not a huge discount, but I think he's going to bounce back and have a better game tonight. Jalen Williams is at 5,800. DeJounte Murray's at 74. There's a lot of guys, even Markelle Fultz. He's a guy I want to highlight on both sites. 58 on FanDuel, 55 on DraftKings. Fultz was heavily owned in game one of the season. I think he was close to 50% in the primary GPP on FanDuel. He had 26 fantasy points in 24 minutes. He only played 24 minutes because that game was a complete blowout.
Yeah.
If he's playing 32 minutes, still hits that fantasy point per minute mark, which he was basically there at the end of last season as well. Once he got the rust off and was back to full strength. I mean, Fultz under 6,000 on both sites. Fantastic play.
I want to get back to your point on Jalen Brown. Not only a dud in the game opener, but a complete dud in that series against the Heat, where they were eliminated in the playoffs in the Eastern Finals. They play the Heat tonight. On the one hand, he should be extremely motivated after his giant contract and all the public criticism to have a big game against the Heat. But on the other hand, Spoelstra always throws that zone at Boston, and they always act like they're surprised, and they never handle it well. It drives me crazy as a Celtics fan. I'm kind of avoiding Celtics tonight because Spoelstra just always seems to have our number.
I was just about to ask you about Boston, Ken. Like when I was catching that game, and it was just a lot of Jason Tatum. Looked like a man among boys at times in that game. And Porzingis, obviously.
Yeah.
But
it was just like the problems of last year. Awesome first quarter, pretty strong in the fourth, but the middle quarters, they just fell in love with themselves, got lackadaisical, fell in love with lazy jump shots, and let go of the rope on defense. And I'm hoping Holiday turns that around. Porzingis was actually fantastic on defense.
He's amazing.
Used to having such a rim protector for the Celtics. Was gorgeous to see. 4 blocks, but he also wildly altered at least 4 other shots. It was wonderful. I'm still excited. It's early. Very excited by that. They actually just ground out the win in a game that last year they would have let slip away, which they did in the season opener last year to the Knicks as soon as the pressure got turned on.
I'll mention 2 things quick. We mentioned Cam Thomas. He is 6,700 on FanDuel. So immediate spike for him. Yeah, and it's possible he doesn't even see 25 minutes, depending on game script. And then, Shannon was talking about Cade and Duran. I mean, one thing I think that's just underrated for DFS is getting really relatively low priced players who could be, or basically are number 1 options on their team. Like Cade is under 9,000 on FanDuel and is clearly the Pistons' number 1 option. And then you can pair him with his favorite, basically passing option. So you take a team's number 1 option, pair him with his favorite passing guy. So I think Cade and Duran is going to be like a really nice stack all season. In terms of guys I'm looking at, obviously who we mentioned already, I think that's good. We have this OKC versus Cleveland game, which I'm very interested in. Darius Garland questionable again, so just keep an eye on that. But this Mobley versus Holmgren matchup, I would be worried about playing Holmgren. Mobley is such a good defender. And in terms of like length, maneuverability, he is completely on par with Chet. I would completely avoid Chet, and I would personally lean Mobley. I think this could be like a really big game for him. To bully Chet, get in the pick and roll, everything like that. So I'm keeping an eye on that matchup.
Well, after seeing what Andre Drummond did to Chet, I mean, it's pretty obvious Chet is washed, and
Right. Yes.
we should all just avoid him. No, Chet's actually very affordable for DFS tonight, but likewise, I'm not a big fan of the matchup. I don't like that Chet only played, I think it was 25 minutes in the first game of the season. They're going to bring him along slowly. They're not going to run him out there for 35 minutes.
You guys both haven't mentioned the big over-under of the night, which is 238 Warriors Kings. Not a lot of starting lineup changes, I guess, though. So nobody stands out.
There are a couple. I mean, honestly, on DraftKings, Chris Paul is one of my favorite plays. He's 6,600. You know, he kind of got off to a slow start in that debut with the Warriors. First half of the season, or first half of that game when I'm watching, my thought was, wow, he looks kind of like Kyle Lowry during the playoffs last season. This isn't great. But then he picked it up and he had a great second half. He's 6,600 on DraftKings. You know, with Draymond Green, basically as long as Draymond Green's out, I think Chris Paul is going to put up pretty stellar lines. So he's good bet for 35 to 40 fantasy points.
Did you see Kyle Lowry's usage rate, by the way, yesterday? 1.9 in 31 minutes.
What the body doesn't age well. That Bumpus does not age well.
But yeah, it's a good point to bring up the highest over under, right? We mentioned at the top of the segment. Again, something Nick brought up on the XM show, Chris Paul, he's a slow down the game guy, though.
Yes.
You know, Draymond, when he's in, Draymond's out for this game. Draymond, when he's in, he grabs the boards and he just goes off of rebounds. He loves that. But watching that first game, Chris Paul, he was slowing the offense down the whole time. We'll walk it up. He's going to control the ball. He's going to stand at the very top of the 3-point line. Everybody on Golden State's going to do some movement. I didn't like their offense. They didn't get a lot of open shots.
You're 65 years old, Alex. That's what you do. That's how Shannon and I run the RotoWire pickup offense.
I played basketball this morning with the old men. There are numerous 60-year-olds on the court, and I felt like an Olympic level athlete.
All right, fellas, is that it for our DFS advice? Alex, tell us about our good friends at Rival Fantasy.
I would love to. LeBron versus Jordan. Magic versus Bird. Barkley versus McHale.
Hello.
Basketball is synonymous with legendary player rivalries. They make the game more fun and give fans the storylines that raise the stakes every time those players meet on the court or come up in conversation. Now, every player matchup and head-to-head debate can be settled on Rival Fantasy. This NBA season, you can play challenges where you decide which NBA player will score more fantasy points in their next game. Play the Rival Fantasy in-house challenges or create your own and get a friend in the mix with customizable social challenges. Sign up at joinrival.com/RotoWire and get a $200 deposit match. Get in on this now before the 2023-24 season tips off. It's time to step up to the challenge on Rival Fantasy. See you in the arena.
That's joinrival.com/RotoWire to get a $200 deposit match.
Well, friends of the Friday podcast, it's time for Ken's 2023-24 debut Old Man Rant.
Arrgh! I'm a bit chubby. That said, why are all the new NBA superstars so darn skinny? Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren gain some weight. Holmgren, that creepy Amish beard doesn't count as real body mass. I miss the thick Washington Bullets of my youth. The Beef Brothers, Jeff Rulin and Rick Mahorn. Mel Dinner Bell Turpin, rest in peace. John Hot Plate Williams. And of course, 7'7", 302-pound George Murison. Sixer Daryl Chocolate Thunder Dawkins could bust Wemby or Chet with one thunder dunk. Andre Drummond almost broke Chet on opening night with a crossover dribble. Get chunky, fellas. Arrgh!
I've said it 1,000 times. Ken loves a thick boy.
I thought Holmgren was out for the year when I saw him. I thought
folded like a chair.
I don't even I think I've watched that clip 15 to 20 times. I can't figure out why he collapsed.
Did the air conditioning turn on? You know, like what gentle breeze knocked Holmgren over into that like compressed somersault. Andre Drummond, you can measure his 40 with a calendar, and yet he he broke ankles of Holmgren in his balsa wood legs. I'm glad he's still alive after that.
Man. Mispronounced names. Ken, I think we're going to have a hard time with Wembanyama all year.
I should have said Wemby. Really,
Wemby.
all you got to say Wemby.
Yeah. Other than that, I think we're I think we're in the clear, right? I mean, we had a lot of Strus, Lively,
Jalen Johnson,
Joe, Thomas, White, Johnson, Tillman. Yeah.
Playing it safe.
Right, exactly. That will conclude it for us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, presented by Underdog, Vivid Seats, and Rival Fantasy. Ken, take us out of here.
Let's go to Dallas, where Lucas said this about rookie Dereck Lively, one of Shannon's suggestions. Lively, who had 16 points, 10 rebounds in his NBA debut versus a certain tall player from France. Anyway, Luca said this about Lively, quote, "He played effing amazing," end quote. I clean that up. Attention passengers, this 3-car fantasy train wreck has hit the end of the line.